Well, today the government released the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook, and as I outlined earlier, it's pretty depressing reading. It shows a $58.3 billion surge in government spending this financial year, and the budget deficit projected to be almost $22 billion worse than forecast back in May over the forward estimates. Here was Jim Chalmers today.
But overall, when you look at those underlying cash balances, they get a little bit better over time.
Shadow Treasurer Angus Taylor joins me now from Canberra. Angus, thank you for your time. $58.3 billion, as we know. The RBA has said multiple times that one of the biggest drivers of inflation is government spending. There seems to be very little effort here to rein it in.
That's exactly right. Australians ultimately foot the bill, and the bill was laid out today. The bill that will be imposed on Australians if we get another 3 years of Labor, and the bill that they've already racked up. So what you actually saw at the heart of this statement today was over the coming 4 years, $233 billion of headline deficits. That's over $23,000 for every Australian family. And make no mistake about it, Caleb, that has to be paid. It's either paid by taxes down the track or, in the current circumstances, by inflation in a more immediate way. I mean, this is what causes inflation. And if you want to get inflation down to a sustainable level and bring interest rates down with it, you have to contain the growth in government spending. And this is a complete fail. Look, the only thing this Treasurer does more than spin is spend, and that's exactly what we saw today.
Well, it's the biggest increase in spending outside of COVID, as I said earlier, more than 5%, which is just extraordinary. But of course, Chalmers is trying to say, well, a lot of this was just unavoidable spending, indexation on the pension, etc. Was this spending unavoidable?
Well, this is a Treasurer who looks for excuses wherever he can find it. So if you go back, he started by blaming the inflation crisis and the economic challenges we have on Vladimir Putin. More recently, he's been blaming it on Donald Trump, on President Xi of China. On the weekend, a little while back, he was talking about veterans and it was all their fault. Now he was saying, I can't help it. I can't help it. He's like someone who drinks too much going to the fridge. I can't help it. But the truth is that those automatic increases in payments come from Labor's homegrown inflation and their record levels of immigration. That's what drives a lot of these numbers, as well as their spending decisions. And of course, that's what's driving this budget over a cliff, just as they've already driven the economy over a cliff, the biggest hit to household disposable incomes in our history and much higher than any other peer country. And Australians are paying a price for all of this.
And this business, he goes on today, look, there's slow economic growth, but there's economic growth and there's real growth in wages. Well, as I said earlier, I don't think most people sitting at home tonight would be looking at their pay packet and going, well, I feel like my wages are actually growing. We know that household spending has gone backward. GDP per capita has gone backward for 7 straight quarters. He won't say we're in a recession, but we are in a recession.
Well, and 7 consecutive quarters of family recession, household recession, where GDP per person is going backwards. 7 consecutive quarters. Now, we've never seen that before in Australia, just as we've never seen the 8.7% reduction in household standard of living, the real disposable incomes of Australians, that we've seen under this Labor government. I mean, it is a disastrous situation. He's not taking responsibility for it, which is why it's not being fixed. Of course, if you ask Australians whether they're better off or worse off than when Labor came to power 2.5 years ago, most of the time we hear worse off. The bad news is what we saw today tells us that another 3 years of Labor means we're just going to see more of the same.
Of course, and what we see in the numbers is that the tax take keeps increasing. So here we all are worrying about how we're going to pay for things, and the government keeps taking more and more tax. What was the number? Income tax is $496.07 billion now this financial year, which is a few billion more than was estimated back in the May budget. I mean, when are we actually going to get some real changes to tax here? They fiddled with stage 3 and said you got a tax cut, but it's all good and well to say you got a tax cut. In the last decade, the income tax take has doubled. They are addicted to it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, the pathway towards lower taxes, simpler, lower, fairer taxes, is to manage spending. I mean, it's not complicated, but that is what you have to do. And of course, this government has lost control of spending, adding the $233 billion over the coming years that we saw in the statement today. But that's why we've opposed over $110 billion of Labor's spending initiatives in this term of Parliament. And this is not, essential health services or other services that Australians rely on. This is initiatives like adding $5 billion a year of bureaucratic costs of Canberra-based bureaucrats. 36,000 Canberra-based bureaucrats are being added by this government right now. I mean, that's the kind of unnecessary spending we're seeing from Labor. But let's face it, it is a big spending, big taxing, big Australia, big immigration Labor government in the tradition of Labor left-wing governments, and we continue to see more of the same.
And employing all those public servants and importing all those migrants is how you get alleged economic growth. It ain't real. Angus Taylor, thank you so much for your time.